What's up, Will? How we doing, man?
Doing great.
Awesome. Awesome.
Uh, anyways, welcome to episode 7 of the podcast. Today we have the current midday show host on 98.5 The Sports Hub, headlines guy on Zolak and Bertrand's, the one, the only, Tim McKone. Welcome back, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Will. I appreciate it.
It's been a while since we last talked, so yeah, it is. Thank you for coming back onto this show. This is currently episode 7 of the podcast, so yeah, thank you for coming back on, Tim, as we will get this interview underway shortly.
Awesome. Awesome. Excited to talk to you and talk some sports for sure.
For sure, Tim. And a lot has changed since we had last talked about 2 or 3 years ago. Very thank you for coming on back then, and then you're coming on now. Just a quick question to start off today's interview. Episode 4 of the podcast, I had Matt McCarthy on. During the interview, Matt McCarthy said this about you. If you can't hear this, then just tell me.
He got a text from his friend saying, "Hey, this went great. It was all good. You've got a great shot." And apparently, I went on. They texted him like, "Dude, no, you're not gonna get it. Like, it's over. See you later." So apparently, he got drunk, and then they came up to him and said, "Hey, listen, if you win, you have to go back on the air." So he was like, "Oh shit! I'm already gonna lose my job. Like, if I get this thing, because I'm banged up." So yeah, I won the contest. McKone's friends, because he had a whole group of people there, booed the shit out of me. And then I got back to my car and found out the air had been let out of my tires. So I'm convinced to this day that Tim McKone let the air out of my tires. So ask him about that.
What are your thoughts on those allegations? And is Matt McCarthy telling the truth right there?
He's telling the truth about pretty much everything when it comes to the contest. So back in, I think it was 2013, the Sports Hub ran in 2014. So they did it for two years. But me and McCarthy were in the first group of people where they held tryouts at 10 different locations. You went, you did headlines, and one person from each place got selected. And they whittled that all the way down to a final four who, like you said, got to go to Hurricane O'Reilly's and do 30 minutes of radio in front of everyone and live on the air at 98.5 The Sports Hub. And I went second. And at that point, the bar was so packed that you couldn't actually hear if you were in the bar what people were saying on the radio. So you really had no idea whether or not the person that was going was good, how you kind of sounded. So you were just kind of going off of reaction. And I did. I had a bunch of buddies that came out to the bar to support me during that. I went second. It went all right. And then McCarthy, like you said, went third. And I got plenty of texts saying, like you said, there's no shot you're going to win this thing. And sure enough, I did not. So he's right about all that stuff. The air and the tires, absolutely not true. We're not going to take responsibility for that. Now, did one of my friends potentially do that? Maybe, but I'm not going to take responsibility for that. Right? That's not on me. That's not on me.
Wow, I'll make sure to let Matt McCarthy know about that. Anyways, uh, how to go from going from Worcester, which I'm pretty sure is where you started your career, to the Sports Hub, and now to the midday show, headlining Zolak and Bertrand.
Yeah, so grew up in Worcester, born and raised, and then went to Roger Williams for college. And when I was in college, I did an internship at a radio station in Worcester, WTAG. And at the time, WTAG had a Holy Cross football, and they also had the Worcester Sharks, which was the AHL affiliate of the San Jose Sharks. Doesn't make a lot of sense for your minor league team if you're in San Jose to be across the country in Worcester, Massachusetts. So that lasted for a year before they actually relocated the team. But that was my first job out of college. It was at the radio station where I got that internship. And I tell, young guys and people that are really trying to break into the business that one of the biggest things that you can do is take an internship, build relationships, and a lot of times that's going to help you get your foot in the door in this business. And it did at WTAG to get my first job, and it did to get my second job, which was at NBC 10 in Providence, where I also interned when I was at Roger Williams. And I was a sports anchor at NBC in Providence for 5 years. I had the opportunity to cover the Patriots, Big East basketball, I'm a huge college basketball fan, so that was awesome to be able to go and cover big time college basketball, both there and also when Dan Hurley was at URI and really had that program rolling as well. And then also cover the Boston teams on top of the Patriots too. So that was a great experience. And then also obviously doing some part-time stuff at 98.5. There was an opening in the midday show about, I don't know, close to a year ago now, and was lucky enough to get selected to join Zolak and Bertrand, and kind of been off and running ever since. But really, the 98.5 job is the first time that I've really had a position that didn't come from relationships that were built through internships or through people that I met during those internships. So whenever I tell young people, if you want to break in, relationships is a huge part of it. And so try to do as many internships and try to get your name out there as much as possible. And I've been lucky enough through that path to kind of get where I am right now.
Absolutely, 100% right there, Tim McKone. I don't know if you remember this, but around 2 or 3 years ago, I interviewed you for a school project at my school, Kent High School. Do you remember that by any chance? If not, that's fine.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I remember doing a Zoom with you guys. You were in the classroom at that time, right?
Yeah,
Doing that. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, that was kind of the inspiration for this whole podcast. So yeah, thank you for inspiring me to this podcast in a way. But one of the questions I didn't get to ask because we were low on time back then is back in 2019, one of your more infamous moments on the radio, or I guess television since it was social media, was the infamous incident where you ball gagged Michael Felger. What was the background behind that, and how did it all happen?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. So at that time, I was doing fill-in stuff and weekend stuff at 98.5, and during the summer months, uh, Felger made a bet with me, and I got to remember what it was, and I think it might have been whether or not they were going to win the Super Bowl or maybe even get to the Super Bowl. He was really down on the Patriots. Surprise, surprise, right? Felger and Maz maybe not high on a New England team. I know that's abnormal, right? And I was, and he made a bet with me. Apparently, by the way, because I really didn't remember it until like the AFC Championship game came around. He said that you could ball gag me if they actually make it to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl. I forget which one at this point. And sure enough, they did. And yeah, that's how it happened. We literally ball gagged Felger. And yes, that has been my claim to fame. The funny story about that is, at that time I was working full time at NBC, and NBC tracks all your social media. They wanted a certain amount of posts a day, and they had this huge board up in the newsroom at the time. And we did the stuff. I ball gagged Felger, and the percentages of social media views across the whole company, it was like 5,000 more than any NBC anchor across the country. And so that got flagged by corporate because they wanted to see, all right, what's working well and what's not working well across the country. And normally, they look at that sort of thing and it's like, hey, they did a really cool story on a high school pitcher that, finally won the big game. So, let's try to find more stories like that. So they saw this huge spike in social media stuff, and corporate was like, oh my God, what's this guy in Providence doing? We got to make sure that we copy this. And sure enough, they find it. And it's me ball gagging some random guy in Boston. And I was brought into the news director's office for that. Corporate was not too pleased with the ball gagging situation. So yes, it certainly made waves in Boston, and unfortunately for me, it got me in a little bit of trouble when it came to NBC as well, because ball gagging is frowned upon when it comes to sports anchors, unfortunately.
Was that the most awkward video of your life?
Yes, it was the most awkward video of my life. It was also the most awkward video of my life to watch with my bosses at NBC. They asked me about it and said, "What the hell are you doing in Boston? What's going on here?" So yeah, no, that was a tough afternoon. Tough afternoon for your boy.
Definitely one of the more hilarious moments at the sports hub throughout its 15-year history. It's been 15 years, right?
Yeah, we're on. I think we actually just passed. I think we're on 16 at this point. Believe it or not, crazy
Feels
stuff.
like feels like it's been yesterday. Now last night we all know what happens. Celtics blew a 20-point lead. Completely devastating, one of the worst losses in franchise history. Personally, I wasn't there outside of the first quarter. I have to go to basketball practice. Can you just sum up what happened to the Celtics after halftime and how they blew that lead?
Yeah, go up 20 midway through the third quarter. And it felt like they were going to cruise to another victory against the Knicks, who they absolutely owned this season, and unfortunately started settling for threes. And I say settling because, quite honestly, a lot of those weren't terrible shots. And if you look at sort of the advanced stats, a lot of them were open looks, believe it or not. But at the same time, when you kind of look at what the Knicks were dealing with and the foul trouble of Karl Anthony Towns, the foul trouble of Jalen Brunson, there were opportunities, despite the fact that they had those open looks from three, to go to the basket, exploit both of those guys that were in foul trouble, and either A, foul them out of the game entirely, or B, what Jalen Brunson was doing was, quite honestly, not playing defense. And really kind of take advantage of that and end it. And unfortunately, they wound up settling for threes. The shots didn't fall. And down the final 2 minutes, the Knicks made some big plays. Jalen Brunson made some big plays. And unfortunately, last night, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum did not. And so New York stole a game one. And like you said, it was an absolutely brutal loss for the Boston Celtics. I still think they'll win this series. But that was certainly a deflating loss for the Celtics, and one that kind of felt like one that we'd seen maybe a few years ago before they'd won the championship, where they tended to kind of take their foot off the gas in situations where they felt comfortable that they kind of had things in hand. And it certainly felt that way in the third quarter, and then it completely fell apart for
them. Kristaps Porzingis put up an outstanding, out of this world 0 points in 13 minutes last night. Is there any way to be concerned with that? And how should the Celtics use them moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. He obviously leaves at halftime and is ruled out with a sickness. Joe Mazzulla saying that he's day-to-day moving forward. So we'll see. I guess the question is, does this relate back to what was going on previously where he missed some time with an illness? Now, Joe Mazzulla seemed to shoot that down, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on moving forward. And yeah, I think you have to have concern if you're a Celtics fan, just from the simple fact that, this is now going on the second postseason here, where you haven't really been able to lean on Porzingis the way that you were hoping for, and certainly can be an X factor for this team. Gets hurt last postseason, and I thought he didn't have a great, and certainly he had a couple brutal games against the Magic. I didn't think he had a great series there, and isn't able to finish game one. So certainly something to keep an eye on, because when you kind of look at the way that this team is built, that's one of those guys that you point to and say, there aren't a lot of other teams that have a response for what they can do with Porzingis when he really has it going. And if they're going to win Banner 19, he's got to be a huge part of it.
Another huge story from the Celtics last night is Jason Tatum only scoring 23 points on pretty bad efficiency, 7 from 23 from the field, and had a pretty bad overtime / fourth quarter. Should we be concerned about Tatum in the clutch moving forward, as well as should the Celtics? How badly do the Celtics need to beat the next game in order to insert their dominance once again?
Look, a win would certainly go a long way in terms of calming fans down. I've seen some people say it's an absolute must win. I don't necessarily buy that. I've seen plenty of series where teams are up 2-0 and then they completely choke it away. So that's not something I point to and say they've got to win game two coming up here. That being said, certainly you want to sort of assert your dominance. And look, it was a game that they should have cruised to a victory with in game one. And I think if they're capable and they play up to their capabilities of playing the way that we know that they can, shouldn't be an issue. My long-term concern for Jason Tatum, quite honestly, not high. I think he's one of the best players in the NBA. I think he's shown on big stages before that he steps up when it does matter most. And I know some people would push back on that, but I think there's plenty of examples, whether that's a game 6 a few years ago and a got to have a game against the defending champs, the Bucks, where he puts up more than 40 points. And they got to have a game, whether it's the game 7 against Philadelphia, where he goes for over 50 points in that one. So we've seen him step up in big spots. I'm not concerned about that. Big picture with this team, I guess I'm concerned about the fact that, I think one of the things that they have over a team like an Oklahoma City is the experience factor. They've been through fights in the Eastern Conference Finals. They've been to 2 finals. They've won a finals and a championship before. And it felt like in game 1 against the Knicks, they weren't the team that had the experience. It felt like the Knicks were the team that had kind of been there before and were able to rise up to that moment in those crunch time minutes, not the Boston Celtics. Now, maybe that's an outlier, but that's certainly something to keep in mind moving forward because, again, I think you look at it and you say that's one of the advantages the Celtics should have in the postseason, and that did not come to fruition last night.
Certainly, Tim. I mean, Celtics need to play better as not just this game versus they had to play better as a team. Can't miss 44 3-pointers or whatever the total was. Another point to add to the Celtics, there's much more competition than there was last year. I mean, even outside of the East, we got the Warriors who looked rejuvenated and looking better than ever, and as well as the Thunder who have been the NBA's best team so far this season. Should we be concerned about how much better the competition is compared to last year? And do you think the Thunder/Warriors can make a run at them if they make the finals this year?
Yeah, well, I think it's great. I think it's a great point. Yeah, I think even the path in the Eastern Conference versus what you had last year. The Knicks are a team that they should take care of business against for sure. But from a talent perspective, they're legit. They have talent across the board. This is a team that was assembled in the offseason with the sole purpose of knocking off and being able to beat and match up against the Boston Celtics. Now, I don't think that the roster, unfortunately for New York fans, rises to the level of a team that's capable of doing it, but it's a test. It's a test. It's a legit playoff team. The Cavs, and look, they are riddled with injuries right now, so we'll see if they get out of their matchup with Indiana. But if they're 100%, that's a legit team in the Eastern Conference. And then to your point too, whoever you're going to get out of the Western Conference, whoever sort of makes it out of that gauntlet here moving forward, is going to be legit. And I think Oklahoma City, certainly just from a talent perspective, is going to be a really, really difficult matchup. And whether that's Golden State or Denver coming out of it, those are 2 teams that have been to the mountaintop before. And Golden State, obviously, with the Jimmy Butler factor now, too, kind of pushing them to another level than what they certainly were at the beginning of this season. Minnesota is probably the one team that I look at out west where if they are able to get out of there, I think you kind of have an advantage. But outside of that, yeah, I think you're going to have a really tough path to another championship. That's not to say that it's impossible. I still really, really like their chances. And I shouldn't say that's the only team that they have an advantage against. I just think it's going to be a really tough matchup if any of those 3 other teams come out.
Branching over to a different subject right now, the NFL Patriots season will be coming back in just a few months. How many wins do you think is acceptable for the Patriots this season, and how well do you think that they will have to play to make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, look, I think you look at their schedule. I think they're going to be an improved team. I think they're going to be a much better team. I think they're going to be a much more well-coached team. Now, I think their win total is actually going to be overinflated and a little bit better than what they actually are, if that makes sense. And I know you kind of say your record is what you are what your record says you are, but they're going to have a soft schedule this year. So I think they're going to have 1 or 2 more wins than maybe they probably should. I'm not going to be stunned if they reach double-digit wins. I really am. I'm not going to be surprised by that at all. I think when you talk about expectations for this team, that 8-9 range certainly I think is more than realistic. I think anything under 7 wins, quite honestly, with the offseason that they've had, with the expectations of this draft class, with the expectations of Drake May in year 2, with the expectations of Josh McDaniels taking over that offense and being paired with a young quarterback, anything under 7 wins, I would characterize as a major disappointment.
First off, I don't know if you can hear my dog barking in the background. If you can't hear that, then great. But you can't hear that.
No,
right?
You're good. You're good.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
She's just barking like crazy right now. I don't know why. Second off, for the Patriots, who do you think who's your dark horse Patriots this year to perform well and to outperform people's expectations?
Outperform people's expectations. I mean, look, I think certainly I think we'll talk offense since that's the sexier side of the ball. No question about it. I think Drake May is going to have a monster year this year. I just think he's poised to really break out and be put on sort of that national stage where you look at him as one of the real young elite quarterbacks in the league. That's not really a dark horse. I think the expectations across New England for Drake May are high. I think Pop Douglas, certainly in this offense, could potentially have sort of a breakout for New England, no question. And then I think really, and it's tough to sort of put the expectations on this player because he's going to be a rookie. But Trevion Henderson and what he can bring to the table and his skill set, his ability to pass block, and his ability to get it done in pass protection, and paired with Josh McDaniels, who has had just a ton of success with backs like him, I think he's poised to sort of be a game breaker and a difference maker, and one of those guys that you point to and say, man, instant impact in year one.
For sure, Tim. I mean, I'm personally a Giants fan, so like I would have loved to see the Giants pick a running back early in the first 3 rounds. I think Trayvon Henderson was probably one of the better picks the Patriots made. They definitely need a running back, especially with Rondre Stevenson looking a little bit worse year by year. So we'll definitely see how that works out with the Patriots. And Will Campbell, fourth overall pick for the Patriots, selected him 1 week ago at this point. How do you think he's going to play in the AFC East as well as the NFL as a league as a whole? Because tackles, they usually struggle in their first few.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think obviously coming in and being asked to be a starting left tackle in the NFL as a rookie is certainly a difficult task. I do think he's going to be paired with a guy like Josh McDaniels, who's well aware of how much they're putting on his plate. And it's a guy that we've seen in the past give help to those left tackles. So if he's really struggling in a game, he's going to slide a tight end over there to give him some help. I don't think he's going to put him on an island. I think he's going to know what the realistic expectations for him are. And I always said, whether it was Bill Belichick or Josh McDaniels, those guys were at their best when they were putting players in a position to be successful. And I thought that they thrived in that when they really had it going during that championship run. And even in 2021, putting Mac Jones in a position to be successful. I think you're going to see that with Will Campbell as well. And really across the board on the offense, I think you're going to see that with Drake May. I think Josh McDaniels is one of the elite offensive coordinators in the league. And he's going to set those guys up for success.
Should we be concerned about the Patriots wide receiver group just in case Stephon Diggs? Obviously Stephon Diggs is going to be out at least for a couple of preseason weeks, maybe even week 1 for the regular season. Should we be concerned if he's like out longer than just week 1?
Yeah, I think that's probably, when you look at the offensive side of the ball, that's your biggest question, right? You've got 2 year 2 receivers, Javon Baker, Jalen Pope. We'll see if either one of those guys is actually on the roster week 1. I have doubts about that, to be totally honest with you. Pop Douglas is a guy I just mentioned, but certainly, is he going to be able to stay healthy throughout a full season? It's a smaller guy, no question about it. Diggs coming off of the knee injury, like you mentioned, as well. So yeah, I think if you look at, and certainly, you've got a really exciting rookie in Williams. I think people are high on him. We've heard, hey, people like that as a selection in the 3rd round. We've also seen the Patriots draft receivers before and it not work out well. So yeah, I think in terms of the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line and the wide receivers are really those 2 big question marks that you have. 2 pretty big question marks to have, by the way, if you're an offense. So Josh McDaniels has his work cut out for him. And yeah, I think the wide receiver room is something you point to and say, what's actually going to shake out and how's it going to shake out?
Quick baseball question to branch over to another subject. Red Sox are playing 500 baseball for about the third or fourth year in a row. 1 through 10, what is your level of anger for the Red Sox right now, and how big should we? Holy shit, I don't know why the fuck I'm stuttering, but how should we be concerned about the Red Sox? I mean, we got Jared Carrabis of all people talking about we should be concerned. So, how do you think 1 through 10?
I'll probably put it at a, man, I don't want to go overboard here. I know that's the job. I'll go 6-8 so far. Look, a really easy schedule to start the year, and you didn't take advantage of it. That's a really frustrating thing. I think if you have the opportunity there to kind of put some separation and take advantage of that soft schedule, you gotta do it. They didn't, unfortunately. I still think there's talent. You have a huge question at first base now, but I do still think that you're going to have a team that's going to be in the mix towards the end. I don't think you're going to see a complete collapse like you have over the last couple of years when it comes to post-trade deadline. But they have their work cut out for him. Alex Cora has his work cut out for him. They've got to figure out what they're going to do at first base. They've got to see if they can get Roman Anthony when he comes up here, figure out that situation as well, how he fits in. If Devers winds up playing first, and I know Alex Cora, again, doubling down, saying that's not under consideration, but what are you going to do at DH? A lot of moving parts there, a lot of work to do, but still a lot of talent on that roster. I think they've underperformed so far, but I still think they're capable of more.
Another question about the Red Sox is Alex Cora. The past 3 seasons, the Red Sox have missed the playoffs, only having one winning season in one of them. Should the Red Sox fire Cora despite winning a World Series previously in 2018? Should they consider firing him at the end of the year if they fail to make the playoffs?
Yeah, let's see what it looks like, right? If they're in the mix and really playing good baseball towards the end, if some of these young players really start to come on and you feel like you're on the upswing, I think that's a different conversation. If this completely falls apart and goes south, if the first base situation doesn't get resolved, if this Devers situation and his relationship with the team continues to kind of be weird, I think that's something you have to look at, because I think not only, in terms of in-game stuff, I think some of the things that we point to with Alex Cora and why I think a lot of people consider him one of the elite managers in the sport, despite, what you just said, because I don't think a lot of people put the record on him as they do so much the talent that was actually on the roster over the last couple of years. This year's a different story for sure. But if you're not able to manage some of those personalities, that's a huge part of it. And that's something that I think his ability to relate to players is something that's kind of separated him. And if he's not able to do that and this thing does go south, then I do think you have to reevaluate that situation. Yeah.
Boston's a very brutal town when it comes to hiring and firing managers. I mean, we've seen Terry Francona get fired after 2 consecutive missed playoff seasons. We've seen John Farrell get fired despite winning a World Series. And we also seen Ron Redding get fired after 1 season despite being a pitching coach for a World Series team. Anyways, previously, or just a couple weeks ago, you participated in the Boston Marathon. What is it going to participating in a marathon like that, and what is it going into your training regimens? Do you go to the gym, or how hard do you train your muscles?
Yeah, so when it comes to the marathon, it's a 16-week program that you do. You're running 6 days a week, and it's broken into 4 easy runs where you're going to go, and it's zone 2 cardio. I'm not going to continue to kind of explain what some of this stuff is, because everyone that's listening to this is going to fall asleep, including yourself, Will. But it's 4 easy runs of about 8 miles is what I was doing. So at my peak, I was probably getting up to between high 40s and high 50s in there for most of the training. And so then you'd have 1 long run a week, and then you do 1 speed workout. So you're running 6 days a week, 4 easy runs, 1 long run, speed workout. And that was kind of it for 16 weeks. And you slowly build and build and build. And that long run goes from, I started out at sort of a half marathon, 13 miles. And eventually your longest run, or at least for me, was 20. And that's sort of the preparation. You build up that aerobic engine, as they would say. You go out there and then you get your ass kicked when it comes marathon time, and you pray for good weather. And unfortunately, for an Irish kid from Worcester, there was probably a little more sun than what I wanted. I was hoping for the 330s. Wanted to break 330. Would have been happy with the 330s, and wound up at 350, 350. 358, I think it was. So yeah, we missed the mark by a little bit, but still a great experience. Happy to finish sub 4. But yeah, I was hoping for a little better time.
Now, is this a thing you do every single year, or is this just like a random thing you just did this year?
Yeah, I used to absolutely hate running. Played a bunch of sports growing up. Running was not a favorite of mine. Basketball, baseball, all that stuff, all in. Hated running, and over like the last 5 years, have fallen in love with it. Can't get enough of it. I've done the Chicago Marathon. Previous to this was a huge opportunity to kind of run Boston, and it was great. So going to continue to train for marathons. Don't have anything on the books right now. I'll do a half marathon here coming up in the summer, and then kind of pick out what we're going to do next. So like golf, marathons have majors. So there's New York, Boston, Chicago. There's London. There's Berlin, and there's Tokyo. We're not going to do Tokyo. We'll see if I get into London or some of these other majors and maybe knock one of those off, or run it back in Boston. We'll see, but that's the plan. Maybe next spring or the following fall.
For sure, Tim. Marathon's always a very fun experience. Definitely a very grueling experience. It takes a lot of work to just even get into a marathon and participate, but that's besides the point. Are you aware of David Goggins? And if so, are you a fan of him?
I am. Yes. I'm aware of David Goggins. I'm a big. I don't know if you've ever heard of Nick Bear. Do you know who Nick Bear is?
No.
No. If you're, I don't know if you're a David Goggins guy. David Goggins, a little more extreme than me. I'm never gonna like throw myself into water tied up and like try to figure out how to get out. That's probably a little too much for me. And I am soft. I do not. I don't stay hard like Goggins does. But Nick Bear, another guy who does endurance sports, endurance athletes. He lifts a lot more than I do. I got to be honest with you. One of the reasons I like lifting is because one of the reasons I like running so much is because I absolutely hate lifting and going to the gym now. But he does both. And so I follow him pretty closely. He's big into marathons as well. He's done some ultras as well. That's something I have zero interest in ever doing, to be honest with you. But the marathon stuff certainly is cool. There's another guy, Ken Rideout, who was a Masters champion, which means that for 50 plus, he's like one of the fastest, if not the fastest guy over 50. And he is an absolute savage, and he's a lot like Goggins too. Like he's got some wires crossed, man. That's a different dude. Those are kind of the guys that I follow when it comes to the endurance stuff. But the endurance stuff, again, it's something that I really had zero interest in when I was younger. And now it's one of my big passions. If we could talk marathoning on Zolak and Bertrand, I would love to do it. There's not a chance in the world that's ever going to happen. But that's one of the things that I absolutely love, and one of my passions, to be totally honest with you. Super dorky, but it's one of my passions outside of Boston sports.
Wise words from Tim, Top G to McKone. I got three more questions lined up for you before I let you go.
Yeah.
The other night I was watching The Town. This is completely unrelated to any other question in the interview so far, but I was watching The Town. Amazing Boston film. I was thinking to myself, I should ask Tim McKone what his favorite Boston film is. I mean, he grew up in Massachusetts, so yeah, what is your favorite Boston film, and what is the reason why for that?
Oh, great question. I'd probably go The Departed. I mean, Hardy and those guys are going to make fun of me for it. They think that movie's overrated. I don't. I love The Departed. So I would go The Departed. Big Leo guy for sure. They give a shout out to Worcester in that movie as well. So I'll go The Departed.
It's probably another great film. I don't think it beats out The Town for me, but yeah, definitely another great film. Another Boston kind of question, stereotypical Boston question right here. But what is your favorite restaurant in Boston? I was in Boston the other day. Ate at a pretty good chain, West End Johnny's. Don't know if you ever heard of it, but yeah, definitely one of my favorite Boston restaurants. But for you, what is your favorite Boston restaurant?
Yeah, there's been plenty of nights in the basement of West End Johnny's that I would like to forget, to be honest with you. So yes, no, I'm well aware of West End Johnny's. Favorite restaurant in Boston? I'll go a little bit Buff's. I mean, Buff's Pub in Newton. The wings are phenomenal. That's somewhere where I actually meet up with buddies to this day and grab some beers and have some wings and stuff like that. So I'll go either Buff's Pub or in Brighton. Look, you're talking sort of. I'm assuming there's a lot of people that say like North End spots and everything. Give me Jim's Deli in Brighton. I'll hammer a buffalo chicken wrap from Jim's Deli any day. Yeah.
Listen, I don't know if anybody can compete with the Kelly's roast beef, bro. Sponsored on 98.5 The Sports Hub at it the other day. That shit was absolutely phenomenal. I don't know about you, but Joe Murray is the go for that, for recommending
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
Anyways, last question before I let you go for today's interview. What is your advice to future sportscasters, and how do you think the radio industry is heading with all the layoffs that are happening right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's a different time when it comes to radio. I think 98.5 certainly is a bit of an outlier when it comes to the popularity and certainly the passion of Boston sports. And I think some of it has to do with the personalities at 98.5. I think we have a super talented group of guys that are working there. But I think a large, and if not, I shouldn't say if not, the biggest piece of that, though, is the passion that people have for Boston sports. And so I think that's why 98.5 is been sort of a bit of an outlier when it comes to the success that they're having. But yeah, it's a changing landscape for sure. I think that when you look at sort of the way that things are heading, whether that's podcasting, video, and I think 98.5 is doing a good job of kind of staying out in front of that and transitioning to some of the YouTube stuff that we do, the social media stuff, obviously the podcasts. But yeah, it's never changing landscape that you kind of have to take a look at and make sure that you're kind of staying up with what the current trends are. No question about it. My advice to younger people, like I said, is that it's a relationships business, and getting your foot in the door at places and building those relationships is absolutely huge. Doing as many internships and getting to know as many people as you possibly can is a huge part of it. That's how I got my start. But I also look at sort of my path, and I don't know if my path necessarily matches up with that changing landscape that we're talking about. So for you to have the ability to come in, do a podcast, get those reps where I had to get them at a WTAG and kind of get my start doing intermission reports for the Worcester Sharks, doing halftime for Holy Cross football. Yeah, that was great. I didn't really have an opportunity to do my own thing like you are right now and interviewing people like you are right now. And so to have that sort of piece of it for you and build relationships when it's not just through internships, but it's the ability to go out and interview people that you might actually want to seek out advice for is a huge leg up than one that I certainly had. And I think it shows you sort of the changing landscape of things. So, I would say for somebody that really wants to do it, do it. Do a podcast like you're doing right now. Interview the people that you want to. Reach out to people. You're going to get people that say, no, I don't want to do your podcast, but you're also going to get a bunch of people that also say yes. You're going to build relationships through that, and that's going to ultimately open up doors. You don't know what those doors are potentially going to be, when those doors are going to open, but putting yourself in a position where you're going to get an opportunity is absolutely huge. And so I would say continue to do it, continue to do reps. This is a business where you're only going to get better by doing it. You can read all about it, you can watch everything, but unless you're doing it, you're not going to get better. And if you do it, you realize how quickly you improve by doing it. And the leaps and bounds that you'll make in just a few months of regular repetition is unbelievable. So relationships and reps, that's what I would say. Those are the two big things if you want to make it in the sports media industry.
Thank you for that great advice, Tim. And overall, just thank you for coming on today's podcast, taking time out of your day just to come on here for about 35, 36 minutes.
No, happy to do it, Will. Glad to catch up.
Thank you, Sam. And we'd love to have you back on sometime in the future. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too, Will. We'll see you.